the end of a deep valley, where rich ore veins rise to the earth's surface, a prehistoric settlement was established. Much later, the land became the location of a prominent medieval town, which was a center of technology, science, and the arts. In its golden age, the town attracted scientists from all over the Western world in search of knowledge and technical advancement.
For many centuries, the region's ore mining industry supplied the surrounding countryside with various metals, including silver and gold. Local industrialists grew wealthy, and so did the town.
Banska Štiavnica is situated in the historical Sitno region of the Štiavnica mountain range. The region was first inhabited by a prehistoric group of tribesmen known as a Lužicka culture. They were followed by a Slavic tribe which left behind clay pottery and bronze tools. However, the first people to begin mining in the area were the Celtic tribesmen, who comprised the region's third major group of settlers. Several centuries before the birth of Christ, they were already mining silver and printing coins.
The remnants of these ancient civilizations lie just outside the town on a plot of land known as Glasenberg or Shiny Hill. It is there that one can also find the remains of a medieval city that was wiped out by invading Tartars.
According to a local legend, the town of Banska Štiavnica was founded by a country shepherd. One day, while tending his flock, he saw two lizards. One was covered in gold dust, the other in silver. When they saw him staring, they darted under a giant boulder. But the shepherd followed close behind. When he finally managed to roll over the rock where the lizards were hiding, he found the future wealth of Banska Štiavnica, a vein of silver and a vein of gold. The medieval citizens of the town held enough stock in the story to include the lucky lizards in the town's municipal emblem and its original coat of arms.
The medieval mining town of Banska Štiavnica was built on royal land. Thus, all the precious metals that were mined there became property of the crown. However, by the end of the 14th century, the town joined the Mid-Slovakian Association of Mining Towns and established its own court of appeals. To a large degree, it had thus freed itself from crown control.
Slovakia was once the most important mining region in Europe. In 1217, Banska Štiavnica produced over 2,700 kilograms of silver. Its peak production year was 1740, when it produced over 25,000 kilograms of silver and 682 kilograms of gold.
In its heyday, the region was not only known as a resource of precious metals, it was also known as a center for new mining technology.
The town is famous for inventing the first large-scale water power system. Melted snow and rain were collected in man-made reservoirs and then channeled into mining facilities and repair shops. The rich interconnected system of reservoirs, ditches, and tunnels ensured an endless source of power and a constant level of water pressure.
Until the 19th century, it was considered the most advanced water power system in the world. Many of the irrigation ditches can still be found today.
While a few of the reservoirs were built as early as 1500, most were constructed in the 18th century. The town's water system was largely the work of two men: Mate Cornell Hell, chief engineer of the Horna Biberova processing plant, and local genius Samuel Mikovini, who was at once the crown geometrician, mathematician, surveyor, cartographer, and civil engineer.
Reservoirs were built between the 16th and 19th centuries. They hold a capacity of 7 million cubic meters of water, while their connective ditches cover a total distance of 72 kilometers. Today, the reservoirs have become lakes, which offer recreation to tourists and locals alike.
Banska Štiavnica was the most prominent mining town in Slovakia, and also headquarters of the state mining institution. By the end of the 16th century, the Chamber of Accounts office had moved here, and it was the primary state institution for mining iron ore, printing coins, and managing the state's forests. The Kammerhof House is still the most prominent building in town. Although its original function is not known for certain, it was probably the location of the so-called Ginger Chamber, the local agency for tax collection and for trading precious metals. Above the building's front entrance, one can still find the original foundation plaque, which reads, "The Chamber House was established in 1550, upon the order of Ferdinand I, by the grace of God, the King of Romania, Hungary, and Bohemia, and the Austrian Prince."
The town's old castle is an eclectic building, which bears the mark of several architectural styles. The town's Virgin Mary Church is situated on the ledge of nearby Paradise Hill and was built at the beginning of the 13th century. 200 years later, a fortress wall was built around the grounds, and the church was converted into a Gothic cathedral. In the 1540s, the building was reconverted once again, this time into a castle defense fortress against the threat of invading Turks. The vault above the nave was destroyed during one of these battles, thus giving the courtyard its present appearance. The castle bears the mark of Roman, Gothic, and Baroque architecture. Since 1900, it has been home to the Municipal Museum.
The former building of the Mining Law Court holds an impressive collection of precious metal formations, bearing witness that Banska Štiavnica was once a world mining center. The exposition covers 8 rooms and comprises over 5,000 exhibits drawn from local and foreign mining sites. Over the course of the centuries, many important scientists from the international mining community came to see the unique and beautiful minerals that were extracted from the mines of Banska Štiavnica.
The town art gallery, housed in a 16th century Gothic Renaissance building, is best known for its statues of St. Catherine and St. Barbara, which used to stand in the old castle church. gallery exhibition is divided into two main parts. One exhibits regional painting and plastic art from the 13th through the 19th centuries, and contains the famous Chamber Lord Portrait Series, which depicts many famous lords from the old castle. Another part of the collection presents the work of local 20th century artists such as Edmund Gwerk, Jaroslav Augusta, and Josef Kolar.
In the first half of the 20th century, Banska Štiavnica was something of a mecca for artists who were enchanted by its fairy tale appearance. Many still come each year to paint the town and its surroundings.
In Banska Štiavnica, one can also find the Slovak Mining Museum, which depicts the history of early mining and features the famous 1881 model of the column extracting machine. There's an underground section of the museum where visitors can get a first-hand glimpse of early mining techniques and conditions.
The town mining towers stores the well-known miner's knocker, which was constructed in 1681. Financed by the Miners' Guild, it was used to summon miners to work in the morning. Today, this knocker's tower is part of the Miners' Museum, displaying the gunpowder exhibition, which explains how the early miners used explosives in their work.
The Piarska Gate was built in honor of Emperor František's visit to Banska Štiavnica in 1554. A few centuries ago, there were bastions on either side of the gate, which were constructed to defend the town against Turkish invasion. The old castle was also fortified against the Turks and equipped with 21 cannons, which were not dismantled until 1848.
The fortification is composed of 4 levels and houses a permanent display of battle paraphernalia left over from the era of Turkish invasions. Armor, weapons, town records, and various cultural relics all mark this embattled period of the town. The new castle remained as a watchtower even after the Turks were expelled, and constituted part of a sentinel system set up by the Union of Slovak Mining Towns. By the 18th century, the threat of invasions had vanished, and the tower became a storehouse for the miners' gunpowder.
Shortly after the Turkish retreat, another guard tower was built on Scharfenberg Hill. But due to efforts of Father František Peger, the building was converted into a church complex in the mid-1700s. Though the renovation was not complete until 1751, the eager priest began holding services there in 1748. The cost of rebuilding the site was 27,245 guldens, and most of that sum was raised from local families and mining companies.
The church is still situated in a quiet, pristine forest and is a perfect place for religious contemplation.
The church's upper facade was badly damaged during the Second World War.
Its oldest engraving is an 18th century plan for the proposed church and is still in place today.
In 1700, 6,000 townspeople died of the plague. To celebrate its passing, the mayor promised to erect a statue of St. Trinity in the town's main square and to hold annual religious services there on St. Trinity's Day.
Sculpting began in 1711, but was not finished until 1764. The total cost of the sculpture amounted to 64,000 guldens, and the burden of the payment fell equally to the State Deputy's Office, the Town Council, and the Mining Guild. A fund for statue maintenance was also established and financed by ordinary miners.
The column is crowned by a statue of the Virgin Mary, who stands on the head of a gargoyle and seems to scratch it with her foot.
Built during the 13th century, the apotheosis of the Virgin Mary Parish Church is one of the oldest buildings in town. Church services were originally held in German. The altar motif was painted by a Viennese named Vincent Fischer in 1808. The church's statues were sculpted in a late Baroque style and were completed in the second half of the 18th century. Several high-ranking mining officials and prominent citizens are buried in its basement. church was built under Joseph II's restrictive edict against Protestant churches. Under its guidelines, the building was not allowed to have a steeple and had to blend into its architectural surroundings. That is why, from the outside, it is quite hard to distinguish from the neighboring houses. The interior design, however, is quite unique.
St. Catherine's Church on Trinity Square has been called a Slovak church because ever since 1658, all its services have been held in the vernacular. The stone baptistery is a remnant from the town's original Gothic interior. A late Gothic statue of the Virgin Mary, carved in limestone, is also a remnant from that period. The oldest relic is the 15th century cross, now on display in the church's anteroom.
In the 18th century, Banska Štiavnica's mining technology was the most advanced in the world. In terms of science, education, and management, it set the standard for the international mining community.
Maria Teresa founded the first World Mining Academy in Banska Štiavnica in 1764. For many years, it produced the world's top miners, foresters, and engineers. Graduates carried their knowledge throughout Europe and overseas.
In 1824, the school's forestry branch broke from the school to found its own academy, known as the Institute of Forestry. The institute planted and maintained many botanical gardens. Some are still around today and house various timber species from the Slovak region.
On a post in front of the so-called Lower Botanical Garden hangs a sign which reads, "Built in memory of our first specialists who promoted the careful cutting and not the destruction of our forests."
In 1881, 478 foreign wood and timber species, most of them non-indigenous, were planted in the Upper Botanical Garden. Not all the species have survived, but the gardens, like the nearby Kisabel town Arboretum, are still of interest to many botanists today.
The woods around Banska Štiavnica are well preserved thanks to the work of leading timber specialists. They are also rich in wildlife, a haven for hunters. The Antol Museum, located in the 1774 classic Baroque mansion, traces the town's hunting tradition from its earliest days.
administration building of the Mining and Forestry Academy was not built until the 19th century and is located near the Botanical Gardens. The academy itself, however, was dissolved in 1919 after the fall of the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
Banska Štiavnica can be accessed by 6 roads, all of which are lined by interesting natural rock formations. Another important historical site is the hot water spring known as Vinje Spa. The spring probably erupted to the surface due to local mining activity. By the 15th century, it had become a vacation spot for many famous guests. František Rákóczi wanted to buy the resort from the town, but to no avail. It finally burned down in 1945 and was never rebuilt. All that remain are a hot water pool and the spa's chapel.
Near Sklena Teplica, there is an interesting rock formation called Sabo Stone. It is a huge rollite cliff named after geologist Joseph Sabo, who drew the first geological map of the region. Sklena Teplica is first mentioned in 1373 under the name of Hasbad, German for hot bath. In the mid-18th century, there were 4 resorts in the town: the Miners' Resort, the Imperial Resort, the Princess Resort, and the Noblemen's Resort. In 1786, mining experts and metallurgists here held the historical conference, which led to the establishment of the world's first international scientific league.
Banska Štiavnica's history and natural sites are an irresistible attraction for tourists and historians. Visitors have always been attracted to the archaeological riches of Sitno. In fact, a chapter of the Independent Tourists Association was founded here in the 1860s. The countryside surrounding Sitno has become a 42-hectare natural preserve, with its highest point 1,009 meters above sea level.
Banska Stiavnica's lakes are quiet places, rarely overcrowded by tourists. One can almost always be assured of finding a secluded, intimate spot there.
There are camping huts, but only next to the largest and most accessible lakes.
A network of paths and signs help tourists to get where they want to go. Paths lead in and out of forests and are often highlighted by historical mining sites.
Even though the town has been around for over 1,000 years, it does not seem at odds with its natural surroundings. In the 18th century, Banska Štiavnica was the second largest town in Hungary. Today, it is going through another period of renewal and reconstruction. Each year, statues are polished anew, artifacts are unearthed, and historical exhibitions are put on display for the benefit of the public. No doubt, many basements in the town are still hiding old relics of the past, which will one day be rediscovered. Every season and every kind of weather casts the town in a different mood and highlights details never noticed before.
The town buildings represent most major architectural styles, and their inscriptions reflect the wisdom of the ages. Live every moment as if it's your last, for it's not important to live long, but to live right. And be happy when it comes your time to leave. You have the favor of the people. You have beauty and youthful passion and spirit. Thus you have been spared the trials of man. And one more inscription, which is so fitting for the town. May God protect this house rebuilt from ashes.
So much has been said and written about Banska Štiavnica, but it is a place that you must see for yourself.